Hey guys, I'm Sage Valentine and I'm back here to review another episode of Fox's 24 Legacy. This time it's all about Season 1, Episode number 4, entitled From 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. So let's just get down to it. Neela is adamant she did not leak the identities of the Rangers, and Donovan was able to see the footage. He's extremely skeptical about Neela because of what he saw, and he tells Neela about this terrorist plot that is pretty much the premise of this season. And Rebecca learns that the terrorists now have the list that Ben Grimes had in the beginning, and he made Eric pretty much run around with the rest of CTU trying to get to him, trying their hardest to get that money, and Eric pretty much doing most of the heavy lifting in that situation just so that they could exchange the money and the little file thingy. Needless to say, the terrorists have it, and Rebecca learns this information from Keith, or as I call him, Zoom from The Flash, and he tells her about Jadala bin Khalid, son of the bin Khalid, who is the mastermind behind all of this. Neela is to be taken to CTU, and she's facing the death penalty. So John brings up the possibility, I believe, to Rebecca, where he says, you know what, Neela could be being set up. And Rebecca looks at the situation like John is being naive because he's the type of person that likes to see the good in everyone. But little does she know that John is obviously right. So John brings up this situation about Neela being implicated in that video. And John says that he's having a hard time accepting this because he's known Neela, obviously, for all this time. His father says as soon as you accept this whole situation that Neela is playing you, the quicker you can move on. And then John is sitting back and he's like, you know, how come you aren't as upset about this as I am? And then Henry, John's father, basically starts talking about how everyone has or have two lives. He wants to replace Neela as the campaign manager, and he says, we are going to get through this. Obviously, because all of this is a part of Henry's plan. Eric is pissed off at Ben Grimes, rightfully so, and he tells Ben that innocent people are going to die because of your BS, because these terrorists now have this flash drive, when all he had to do was just hand Eric the flash drive without all of this rigmarole. He tells Ben to tell us, meaning him and the CTU agents, everything that he knows. And then Eric says, you know, everybody's dead because of you. The rest of the Rangers, Eric's sister and her family. I mean, Ben just messed everything all up. And Ben basically says, you know, I can fix this, I can make this right. And I'm just like, he better find a way after all the mess that he has done in this series so far. I would be upset if somebody magically took my phone away from me. So I'm here with Nicole. I completely understand why she's upset. And Aisha is pretty much over Nicole. She's just like, make yourself comfortable. And then she gets up and leaves the room, and she starts making a phone call. She calls up Royo, the Dominican guy who Isaac is driving to complete this deal that he has with him. Aisha's talking to Royo, and she's checking up on that whole situation, you know, the part where she basically convinced Royo to kill Isaac or have Isaac killed. But that dude won't make a move until he has the quote-unquote merchandise. And pretty much everybody in his car is ready and waiting to shoot the crap out of Isaac and whoever he is brought with him. All they need to wait for is the signal, i.e. see the product. So Nicole asked Jerome, Isaac's number 2, to change the channel on the TV because she's tired of watching whatever the hell is on the television. And while he's distracted, she flips over the table and she escapes. She's running, she jumps over the banister, she's taking off. And to be honest, she ran better than poor Rickon Stark from Game of Thrones because she was zigzagging. I hate to compare Rickon and Nicole, but unfortunately, if that dude had zigzagged, he would still be alive. Rest in peace, Rickon. Anyway, Nicole's running for help. No one's helping her, and I don't blame them. They don't want to be involved in it. That one person closed the door, and I was cracking up like, wow, that guy's just not helping at all. So Nicole is hiding behind a car, and Aisha and Jerome are about to close in on her. Then all of a sudden they split up. Aisha hears a sound, realizes that Nicole is near the car. I believe it was on the right to her. She tries to engage with Nicole. Nicole grabs hold of this metal bar and bops Aisha over the head. And then she grabs her gun. Jerome pops up, and I was about to say Aisha. Nicole grabs Jerome's gun. She is so badass. Isaac gets a call immediately from Nicole, and Nicole is telling him about Royal's plot with Aisha. So to save face, because at this point Isaac is standing there with Royal, he basically hangs up, lies and says his men are in place on the rooftops, and he knows what Royal had planned. He was like, you can try to do what you planned, or we can do business. And all of a sudden Royal's like, ixnay, we're just gonna do business. Nicole has both of the guns, Aisha's and Jerome's, and she's holding it on them. Aisha is trying her because Aisha believes, and this is what it seems like she believes, like Nicole's not going to be able to do it, and maybe she or Jerome can disarm Nicole. But all of a sudden the cops pull up, Aisha and Jerome take off running, Nicole gets arrested, which is unfortunate because now she's in the system, and since she and Eric are on the run, this is not a good thing at all, not good. So back at CTU, Neela is taken in to the building. Rebecca is asked to be with Keith for the interrogation of Neela. Rebecca asks Andy to pull up some interrogation files. Isaac is talking to Eric because Eric, I think, called him, and Eric is worried about Nicole because Nicole called him about Aisha because she felt uneasy about the situation, and she was 100% right. Isaac tells Eric that Nicole saved him from that drama, and she is back at his place safe and sound, and she's good. Or so Isaac thinks, because Isaac doesn't know anything about the situation at this point. Eric enters the CTU for the first time, and it's beautiful to see the new CTU as a longtime fan of 24, because over the years it has undergone a renovation and the technology has changed, and I just love the way it looks. It looks awesome. It's very high tech, very advanced. So Rebecca and Eric hug. It's so sweet. Eric and Andy finally meet, and Eric tells Andy, man, you saved my life quite a few times today. Rebecca apologizes to Eric for what happened to his men. Eric is supposed to debrief, but he wants to see Ben Grimes. So Ben is in the infirmary. So Mariana, who is Edgar's niece, the chick that I really think is shady, she tells Andy that Andy's intuition was right. Keith does, and by Keith I mean Zoom from The Flash, does want to fire Andy, and he's using Mariana as some sort of spy to watch out for any screw-ups that Andy does. And Mariana basically tells him, don't screw up. Keith and Rebecca are talking to the main directors, I believe, of Homeland Security, if I'm not mistaken. And they tell them about Ben Khalid's son's plan. Eric goes to see Ben. Ben is just like, I can fix it. I can fix this situation. Some dude named Gabriel has some modified A120 rifles. He's an arms smuggler. He usually smuggles arms, meaning guns, and people. So it's quite possible that he smuggled Jadala, Ben Khalid, and his people into the United States. So Ben is just like, this is my last chance to do something right. And if Ben's idea works, the thing is, Jadala and his men can't do anything because they discovered that the little file thingy is corrupted. But rather than being upset, Jadala's like, well, I saw the man who killed my father. I'm thinking Eric for some reason. I feel like Eric is the one that killed the original Ben Khalid. And that means to Jadala that he is on a righteous path. So he basically tells the dude who explained about the corrupted file that he needs to fix it. So at the hospital, Amira, the high school girl, who's technically, in my opinion, probably a grown woman acting like a high school girl, she calls her brother Kassan, who works with Jadala Ben Khalid, in case you didn't realize it, he does. And she tells him Drew is not dead and she needs to know how she can kill Drew. But before she can, here comes Drew's mother and they embrace. And I'm just shaking my head like, you are hugging this lady and you're about to kill her son. Cold as ice. And the doctor says in front of Amira and Drew's mother that Drew is A-okay. I'm just like, that was the last thing you should be telling Amira. So John Donovan learns that Neela was telling the truth. She was a protester and she did go to that mosque to protest what that imam was saying. He even saw the video, the real video. So Eric is in a meeting with Rebecca, Keith, and Andy. And in that meeting, Eric is talking about Ben's whole Gabriel idea and how the only way to lure this dude out is with bait, and that bait being highly classified schematics of what sounded like nuclear warheads or something like that. And Keith is iffy about giving them up. I don't blame him, but they're going to have to do what they have to do because, on a side note, in 24, they ended up having to pass classified information back and forth a lot during those seasons, and I think they also had to do it during 24 Live Another Day as well. But anyway, Eric vouches for Ben, saying that he believes Ben is telling the truth. Eric wants to do this, but Keith Mullins won't authorize it because there are too many variables, and Rebecca's wondering whether or not Eric can trust Grimes, and I'm wondering that as well. But for the moment, Eric is going to do what he has to do, and on a side note, hopefully everything goes well because Ben Grimes is nothing more than an albatross. A big one. So Rebecca knows someone who can get the Onyx schematics. But after that, Eric is on his own. So Rebecca tells Andy to steal the Onyx schematics, but he's already looking into it because he had an inkling that Rebecca was somehow, some way going to do this or going to go along with what Eric is talking about. Andy is also doing this because he knows that Keith Mullins wants to fire him because, remember, Mariana kind of sort of clued him in, but I'm still iffy about her telling him like that. Like, something is off about her. Isaac has some type of rapport with the police because he is able to convince the cops to let Nicole go because he tells them that she's important to him, and basically he's kind of like, I will scratch your back if you do this for me. And the cop was like, well, you're gonna have to help my friend. And Isaac's like, well, I'll scratch his back too, so to speak. So Nicole explains that Aisha and Jerome got away, and Isaac is upset because he's like, I'm supposed to be protecting you and you're protecting me. You did that for me. And he wants to know everything about that situation. And on a side note, Isaac is still in love with Nicole, you can tell. Does Nicole love him? Is she into him that way? I don't think so. I believe wholeheartedly that Nicole really loves Eric. Amira is able to grab a syringe because this hospital is extremely lackadaisical. Nobody's paying attention to what is going on at all. And throughout this entire scene, and I'm about to paraphrase or review, I was just like, where is Drew's mom and what is taking her so long to get, I think it was a cup of coffee? Anyway, Amira grabs this syringe and she connects it where she's supposed to. It's like an extra IV where they stick the different injections into beyond the fluid injection thingy. Anyway, Drew wakes up. He sees Amira. He's freaking out. And I'm just like, why is no one coming towards this room? Because it's clear that as Drew's stress level rises, the beeping on the monitors around his bed seems to get louder and louder and louder. And I'm just like, what is going on with this lackadaisical hospital? John Donovan goes to speak to his father, Henry, and he tells him that he's not replacing Neela as his campaign manager. He knows about that footage of Neela at that mosque and how it was altered. He knows that the Rangers' names, the ones that were killed, and Ben Grimes and Eric Carter's names, were stolen from his headquarters. The only people that knew about those names and the name changes and everything was John, Rebecca, and John's dad. I believe his name is Henry. John is upset at what his father did, and his father claimed that he did it to save John's campaign. He said that he was contacted by Jadala bin Khalid and he was about to be blackmailed because of some oil purchase that was done in an exchange with ISIL, or as we know it, probably ISIS, but you know they can't say ISIS, so they're going to say ISIL, obviously. I guess that's the show's version of ISIS. So Henry reveals that the director of his company did it without telling him, and he could not allow John to pay for it. John is livid. He tries to get his father to admit what happened to Rebecca, and John asks if his uncle, Lewis, who he calls Tio, knows about the situation, and Henry's like, no, Tio didn't know anything about it. So Henry tells John, if you go to Rebecca and you tell her this information, it's going to ruin you. So when John approaches his uncle acts like he doesn't know what John is talking about. But in reality, he does. And Henry and Uncle Lewis decide that if John goes public, if John tells anybody about what happened, they're going to deny everything. Neela did not do anything, and this is what John tells Rebecca. Neela is innocent. While Eric is being debriefed, he receives a text message with the schematics for the Onyx. That's when Eric just decides, you know what, conversation over, and basically ends up tying up the man debriefing him. Mr. Harris, on the side note, is still making that bomb in his classroom. Eric throws this thing in the hallway that eventually knocks out the internet in the building, but it does it gradually, or I think it's the internet and the electricity, but it does it gradually because it doesn't happen fully in the CTU, I'm going to call it the great room, until towards the end of the episode. I mean, like the really, really end part of the episode. Eric takes down the two guards outside of Ben's room and helps Ben escape with him. As I said, Eric's little thingy knocks out the net in the entire building and the electricity. Pretty much they are blind. CTU doesn't know what the hell's going on. But they realize that Ben and Eric have escaped the building. And Eric pretty much tells Ben, listen, if you cross me, if you're playing me, I will kill you myself. So thank you guys so much for watching this review. I do have a 24 Legacy review to do after tonight's episode, and I have Walking Dead, and I have Emerald City. I know that this review is late, but again, thank you so much for watching. This was literally my second time watching the episode, and it was even better watching it the second time than watching it the first time. So you all take care. I love you all. Bye, guys. Bye.